1820. That is the number they want you to remember. That is the year the history books claim Antarctica was first sighted, first officially documented, first acknowledged by the modern world. For generations, we accepted this date without question. Why wouldn't we? It is printed in every textbook, etched into every timeline, taught as a static, immovable fact of human progress. But what if 1820 was not a beginning? What if 1820 was a cover story, a strategic seal placed upon a continent that the world was never supposed to truly see again? Welcome to CipherHistory. Today, we're not just looking at a map, we are looking at a crime scene. To understand the mystery of the frozen South, we have to look exactly 4 years prior to its discovery. We must return to 1816, the year mainstream history calls the year without a summer. The official narrative tells us that Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted, spewing so much ash into the atmosphere that it lowered global temperatures, destroyed harvests, and triggered famines from New England to Northern Europe. A tidy, geological explanation. But when you pull on the threads of 1816, the fabric of our history begins to unravel. The crop failures were not just regional, they were global. The reports of unnatural violet sunsets and snow in June were everywhere at once. And more strangely, the years following 1816 saw a sudden, sweeping civilizational amnesia. Entire communities seemed to lose their continuity with the past. This was not just a volcanic event. It bore the terrifying signature of what we today call a nuclear winter. A sudden, total atmospheric blackout. A reset. This was the final act of the collapse of the global Old World civilization. The empire we now call Tartaria. A civilization whose fingerprints are visible in the impossible architecture of our cities, in the star forts scattered across every continent, and in the city grids that appeared out of nowhere without a single blueprint or construction phase in the record. And then, just as the dust from this catastrophe began to settle, 3 world powers, Britain, America, and Russia, simultaneously discovered Antarctica in 1820. 3 independent expeditions, all arriving in the same remote, inaccessible region within months of each other. Is that a coincidence of exploration? Or was it a coordinated military blockade? Think about the gap. 4 years. Just 4 years after the world went dark, the most remote landmass on Earth is suddenly claimed and catalogued. Why then? After thousands of years of human maritime history, after the Phoenicians, the Romans, and the Chinese, why did it remain a blank space until the exact moment a global reset was being finalized? The answer lies in the maps that shouldn't exist. If the 1820 discovery date is the cornerstone of our modern history, then the cartographic record is the sledgehammer that shatters it. Deep within the archives, far away from the curated lessons of introductory history courses, exist documents that prove Antarctica was known, mapped, and charted long before the first wooden hull of 1820 ever touched the ice. Take the Piri Reis map, dated 1513. Drawn by an Ottoman admiral, this map shows a southern landmass with a detailed, accurate coastline. But here is the part that should make your blood run cold. When researchers in the 20th century overlaid this 16th century map against modern satellite imaging of the subglacial terrain, the actual rock surface hidden beneath 2 miles of ice, it aligned with a precision that defies explanation. Then there is the Oronce Finé map of 1531. It goes even further. It depicts Antarctica not as a speculative blob, but as a continent without ice. It shows river systems. It shows mountain ranges. It shows internal geographic features that humanity did not technologically confirm existed until the development of mid-20th century sonar. Let that sink in. A map drawn in 1531 shows the physical reality of a continent that was supposedly discovered in 1820 and not technologically mapped until the 1950s. The academic response has always been a dismissive shrug, lucky guesses, philosophical symmetry, or creative cartography. But you cannot guess a subglacial mountain ridge. You cannot guess a river system that has been buried under ice for what we are told is millions of years. You don't theorize geography this accurate. You map it from observation. You map it because you were there. So, who was there? If Antarctica was ice-free and habitable in recent historical time, recent enough for humans to map it and pass that knowledge down through a chain of hidden hands, then the official timeline of our planet is a lie. This suggests that the glaciation of the South was not a slow geological crawl over eons, but a sudden, violent event. Perhaps the catastrophe of 1816 was not just an ending for Tartaria, but a deliberate environmental weapon. What if the same mechanism that turned summer into winter across the northern hemisphere was designed to accelerate the freezing of the South? What if Antarctica was the heart of the old world, and the ice was the shroud used to bury its greatest secrets? The discovery in 1820 wasn't a mission of exploration. It was a survey of the tomb. The world powers weren't looking for new land. They were checking the lock on the door. And as we move into the 20th century, that lock became a military-grade seal. In 1938, Nazi Germany launched the Schwabenland expedition to Antarctica. They didn't just map the territory. They dropped thousands of markers to assert a claim. Why would a regime obsessed with occult power and ancient origins spend precious resources on a frozen wasteland just years before starting a world war? Because they were following the same maps. They were hunting for the same inherited knowledge that predated the modern world. Then, just 1 year after World War II ended, the United States responded with Operation Highjump. This wasn't a research team. It was a full military invasion. 13 ships, 33 aircraft, nearly 5,000 military personnel led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd. They told us it was for mapping. But you don't send a battle group to map ice. You send a battle group to confront an enemy, or to secure a perimeter. What Admiral Byrd found during Operation Highjump remains one of the most guarded secrets of the 20th century. Upon his return, Byrd gave a television interview that has since become the stuff of legend. He spoke of a land beyond the pole, a territory as large as the United States that had never been seen by a human being. He spoke of resources and an environment that contradicted everything we were told about the frozen desert. And then, the silence descended. But the silence was not just American. It was global. In 1959, at the height of the Cold War, a time when the United States and the Soviet Union were ready to annihilate each other with nuclear weapons, something extraordinary happened. They agreed on something. They, along with dozens of other nations, signed the Antarctic Treaty. The treaty designates Antarctica as a scientific preserve and explicitly prohibits military activity, mineral extraction, and nuclear testing. On the surface, it sounds noble. It sounds like environmental protection. But in the world of geopolitics, nations do not agree on anything. They disagree on borders, on trade, on religion, on every square inch of dirt on this planet. Yet for over 60 years, the Antarctic Treaty has remained the only piece of international law that has never been broken. Why? What is so dangerous about ice and penguins that it requires the unanimous, unwavering cooperation of 50 rival nations? In practice, this treaty means that independent, unsupervised exploration of the Antarctic interior is impossible. You cannot simply buy a boat and sail there. You cannot fly your own plane over the interior. You need permits that are almost impossible to obtain for anything outside of approved, government-sanctioned research. You need logistical support that only a handful of state actors can provide. Antarctica is functionally the only place on Earth that you, a free citizen of the 21st century, are not allowed to go and look around. You can climb Everest. You can trek across the Sahara. You can sail to the most remote islands in the Pacific, but you cannot see the heart of the southern continent. This brings us back to the Tartaria connection. Across this channel, we have documented the evidence of an old-world civilization hidden in plain sight. We have seen the mud-flood windows in our own cities, the massive stone cathedrals built by horse and buggy settlers, and the star forts that align with celestial bodies. We have seen the missing documentation for our greatest architectural feats. If this global civilization existed, and if it was wiped out in the early 19th century, where would the survivors go? Or better yet, where would the evidence of their highest technology be stored? If you wanted to hide the remains of a world-spanning empire, an empire that used free energy, that understood the true frequency of the Earth, and that built with a precision we still cannot replicate, where would you put it? You would put it under 2 miles of ice. You would freeze it. You would label it a wasteland to discourage curiosity. And then, you would sign a treaty ensuring that no one could ever go there to dig it up. The silence of the mainstream media and academia on this subject is not accidental. The lack of high-resolution satellite data for the Antarctic interior is not a technical limitation. It is a choice. We have ground-penetrating radar that can see a license plate from orbit. Yet the subglacial topography of Antarctica remains a low-resolution mystery to the public. The silence we encounter when we ask about Antarctica is not an absence of information. It is the shape of a deliberate erasure. We are told that the ice sheets of the South have been there for millions of years. Yet we have seen the maps of the 1500s showing an ice-free terrain. We are told that the world was a primitive place of warring tribes until the Industrial Revolution. Yet we see the architectural fingerprints of a global high-tech civilization, Tartaria, etched into the stone of every major city on Earth. The number 1820 is the seal on the tomb. It is the moment the custodians of our current reality officially claimed the crime scene. By naming it Antarctica and declaring it a frozen void, they moved the most important evidence of our true history out of reach. They turned the heart of the old world into a forbidden zone. Think about the coordination. 50 nations, decades of silence. No one breaks ranks. No one leaks the high-resolution scans of the structures hiding in the Ellsworth Mountains. No one mentions why the GPS systems fail, or why the flight paths are so strictly diverted. What are they protecting? Are they protecting us from a truth that would shatter our worldview? Or are they protecting themselves? If we knew that a global civilization existed just 200 years ago, a civilization that lived in harmony with the Earth's energy, a civilization that didn't need the oil and debt-based systems that enslave us today, their power would vanish overnight. The ice of Antarctica is not just frozen water. It is a time capsule of who we used to be. It is the physical manifestation of the Great Reset of the 19th century. They froze the evidence, they rewrote the maps, and they called it a discovery. But the ice is thinning, not just physically, but metaphorically. More people are looking at the dates. More people are questioning the year without a summer. More people are recognizing that the architecture of our world does not match the story we were told in school. We are living in an age of disclosure. But the truth will not be handed to us by the people who signed the treaties. It will be found by those who look at the gaps in the data, those who see the structure of the silence. Here at CipherHistory, we don't just ask what happened, we ask why they don't want us to know. If this deep dive into the frozen secrets of our past has opened your eyes, then our mission is working. The matrix of history only holds as long as you refuse to look at the cracks. What do you think is waiting under 2 miles of frozen silence? Is it a lost city? A technology we've forgotten? Or is it simply the proof that everything we know about our timeline is a lie? Leave a comment below with the number 1820 if you've made it this far. Let us know your theories. And if you are ready to keep decoding the erasure of our world, subscribe and join the CipherHistory community. The truth isn't lost. It's just waiting for the thaw.